In midwifery practice and day-to-day life in general, I hope we can all agree that consent is important, right? And even if for whatever reason you don't agree with consent, it is by law in New South Wales that adults with capacity have a right to decide what happens to their own bodies. This means women have a right to decline or agree to any intervention, no matter how big or small. Unfortunately, while this might seem quite simple, there are certain situations and barriers within midwifery practice that can influence a woman to consent without a full understanding of what they're actually consenting to. This is why informed consent is so important. Informed consent ensures a woman fully understands the risks, benefits, and alternatives before making her decision, without pressure or coercion. For informed consent to be possible, there must be an open discussion between the woman and a qualified healthcare worker facilitating respect for autonomy and the right to decline care at any time. But, as I mentioned, there are situations in midwifery where consent is not properly obtained, resulting in unsafe and distressing experiences for women. An example of this is the abuse of language barriers in the healthcare system, when midwives or doctors don't prioritise interpreter services or assume that women with limited English proficiency will manage without clear explanation. It reflects a broader pattern of neglect towards marginalised communities. This can lead to women being excluded from informed decision-making or dismissed when expressing their preferences. This is particularly evident in high-pressure situations. All too often we see rushed explanations, medical jargon, and an assumption that a nod or silence means agreement. But consent isn't just about words, it's about comprehension. There was an incident that I had on placement where a woman from Russia was having her baby on birth unit. She was doing so well, breathing through her contractions, free of pain medication. But then as she transitioned, her baby became quite distressed with multiple bradycardias, which means a drop in baby's heart rate. This, of course, triggered a rush of doctors into the room, speaking medical jargon like vacuum delivery and episiotomy, and whilst her English had previously been fine, it was obvious that she was so disorientated from everything that was going on that she was not understanding a single word they were saying. Whether the doctors failed to notice or simply acted without consent, they proceeded with vaginal examinations, pulling on the baby's head, and almost performing an episiotomy without anaesthesia. This was so far from consent, and it was obvious to me that because of her linguistic background, these doctors had removed all bodily autonomy, resulting in a woman having a traumatizing birth experience that she may not ever fully understand. Now, obviously, in emergency situations, informed consent is going to look very different from an experience in, let's say, the clinic, but that does not mean it isn't necessary. And in these emergency situations, it's crucial that we address these language barriers as part of dismantling systemic racism. Using interpreter services, whether in person, over the phone, or via video, can make a huge difference. But of course, sometimes that isn't possible, which is horrible, but in these circumstances, it's important to prioritise calm and simple communication, avoiding medical terminology and instead using gestures or visuals to explain what is happening and the options available. And then, of course, after the emergency, actually acknowledging her experience is so important to ensure she feels safe, heard, and respected. Another issue I have found drastically impacts informed consent is honesty in antenatal conversations. All too often I've seen midwives and doctors tiptoeing around difficult conversations because they either don't want to cause anxiety for a woman or because of their own obstetric bias. But shielding women from information doesn't protect them. It takes away their ability to make informed choices. This came up in my university class regarding the Montgomery case. The Montgomery case was a landmark ruling in the UK that established a woman's right to be fully informed of all the risks relevant to her childbirth. It arose after Nadine Montgomery, a woman with diabetes, was not warned about the risk of shoulder dystocia during vaginal birth, leading to serious and long-term harm to her baby. Despite this legal ruling, even today we see healthcare providers avoiding certain topics, whether it's the risk of interventions, VBAC, or the reality of tearing. But withholding information isn't kindness, it's paternalism. Women have the right to weigh up risks and make the decisions that are best for them. The solution is trust. Through continuity of care, we build relationships where women feel supported, not scared by honest conversations. Instead of filtering information to fit what we think they can handle, we should focus on empowering them because informed consent isn't just a checkbox. It's about ensuring women have the knowledge and confidence to make the best decisions for themselves and their babies. By prioritising clear communication, challenging systemic barriers, and embracing continuity of care, we can create a system where every woman feels heard, valued, and in control of her own birth experience.